Active Recovery 101. Fingers crossed we get to do this in one, no disconnections. I've been on the phone to Virgin Internet all week to try and get this sorted. Okay, today's quote is, "Success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person that you become." This was inspired from Johnny, who has been recommending James Clear's new book to me, Atomic Habits. If you've read it, please let me know in the comments. James Clear is kind of the guy on habits, and it's really shifted our perspectives on how to approach goals. Because if you set a goal of a certain outcome, certain target, some of those things may or may not be within your control. What's worse is that even if they are in your control, but you have the goal, as you approach the deadline for that goal, if you've not achieved it, it's just like, oh, I've just failed. Or like a week out, you just start panicking and start trying to cobble together all of the actions that are needed to achieve that goal. What if instead you became the person who would achieve that goal? Your daily routine, every 24-hour block of your life, was habits and actions that would naturally lead to achieving that goal, rather than thinking of the goal as the end in and of itself. So now that's shifted the way that we approach 90-day goals, where the target is more of a process goal rather than an outcome goal. It takes the pressure off. It means that you don't have to achieve something by a certain deadline that you may or may not achieve, but instead you've developed a habit that will carry you further and beyond, and enjoy the process in itself, which is far more important. So if you're able to wake up, stretch, train, lift, meditate, and enjoy every step of that along the way, then they aren't just seen as stressful events that are all kind of a house of cards predicated on you actually achieving something at some point in the future. And even if you do, it's like, okay, I've achieved the goal, now what? So yeah, worthwhile checking out James Clear. And if you have like an Audible credit, or you want to get a new book, Atomic Habits is the one. I can't believe I'm recommending a book that I've not actually read, but I definitely have read a lot of James Clear's stuff and know where it's all coming from. So today we are talking about Active Recovery 101. Had a few people in the group. So Hazel has asked, "I'm hitting PBs and lifting heavier each session, and I must have extra rest days to recover. Ran this morning, but my legs are killing me. Stiff, DOMs all day. Realised that I've been starving. Literally not satisfied at all. Just this general feeling of emptiness in my stomach. What do I do on days off the gym? I've decided not to run, but I could maybe do yoga, core work, and press-ups instead. Please let me know." Great question, Hazel. So the first thing is to run through the magical checklist. Make sure that all of these things have a nice big green tick next to them. So nutrition, stress, training, sleep, and injury or illness. If you have any one of these that's out of kilter, then it is going to affect your recovery, and it is going to cause these kind of symptoms that you're getting of the either extreme hunger and soreness and just generally feeling a bit crap. You should not necessarily need extra days in the gym to recover, because we've set out the programming such that you can recover from it with the progression model that we've set out. So we want to make sure that these things are ticked off first before we start looking at adding in extra rest days. So the first thing in the list is nutrition. Are you eating too little? Make sure that you are hitting your nutritional targets. It's a very common thing for people to think, oh, my targets look a bit high, I'm just going to undereat slightly. I'm just going to go slightly under my targets and hope that it's okay. All that happens is you're just eating new targets. So you're fooling yourself, and if you end up losing more than 1% of your body weight per week, which again is very tempting because we all want to hit our goals faster, what will end up happening is you crash, you end up getting a lot of the signs of depression and worsened recovery and reduced testosterone from losing more than that amount of weight, and that is well evidenced in the data. So we want to make sure that we're still hitting our targets of 0.5 to 1% per week on average. If it strays much far away from that, then we want to adjust calories. Also, you want to make sure, speaking of calories, that they are no lower than 10 calories per pound. Or I think there's that 4 calories per, no it's not, how much per kilogram? 1690 divided by 27, so 21 22 calories per kilogram. So if you weigh 77 kilos, for example, that's 169 pounds, that's 1690 calories. If your calories are too far below that, then it's just not supporting your recovery. And also, we want to make sure that protein is at least 1 gram per kilogram as well. So that's about 77 grams of protein if you weigh around 77 kilos. Usually, if you're not sure of your weight in kilos or whatever, then it'll be you probably weigh between, say, 60 and 100 kilos, so between 60 and 100 grams. Although you should know what you weigh, especially if you're on this program. So the next thing is stress. Check thyself such that thou doth not wreck thyself. This is very important. Now, stress categorically prolongs your recovery. Even when you adjust for training age, how fit you are, what the total workload is, it doesn't matter. You cannot immunize yourself against the effect of stress on recovery. This is really interesting. This is a study looking at, so MNPSS is just the mean psychological stress score, and this is the amount of recovery that people were, or the amount that they were able to exert force again after a training session, based on how much stress they had. And it's like a linear relationship here. You can see that the people who are the most stressed subjectively when they are asked in a questionnaire, they've barely recovered 96 hours after they have done their training. So recovery length is massively prolonged. Compared to the least stressed group, they recovered mostly within 48 hours. And they start to supercompensate as well, and we see things drop off again where they've lost that training effect once again. So it shows in terms of just physically how strong you are, and that relates to how stressed you are as well. Something that Eric Helms told me when he was coaching me is stress is stress is stress. And this is so important, that just because your training stress might be quite low doesn't mean that you're immune. Physical stress, if you're cycling to work every day, that can add up. If you've got some problem going on in your relationship, if you're wanting to get married and she's like, no. If there's something going on at work, big projects, big deadlines, etc., or family problems as well, all of these things will add up and have a physical effect on how much force you can actually output with your muscles. It's crazy, but this is the truth. So there are some things that you can do. So lying relaxation exercises, let's cover them first. So these will improve your cortisol levels, and cortisol is one of the big markers of stress. As you can see here, doing 15 minutes of lying relaxation. This was the protocol that they did. So 7 seconds of contraction of each muscle head to toe, followed by 30 seconds of relaxation, done once daily for 15 minutes, was enough to basically halve the cortisol levels that we see here in these people's cortisol. So that's pretty interesting. They didn't kind of acclimate to the effect either. So even after 8 days of doing it, it was massively improved. The control group, what they had them do was just sit in a chair quietly for 15 minutes instead. So it looks like that did have some effect as well, possibly over 8 days. I don't know if that's just a sort of statistical artifact, but very interesting to see. I've got the hiccups again. Heart math and heart rate variability. So heart math is a series of techniques based around human brain-heart coherence, and a lot of the techniques are derived from Buddhism. So metta meditation is one of them, which is the kind of loving kindness meditation, and that's one of the approaches that they use. We can see that it has a distinct effect, even visually, on heart rate variability. So if we look at these, freeze frame is just one of their techniques, and you can see before and after there is a clear difference in what's going on with the coherence here. And there's a few other bits of data as well that can kind of support this if you're not convinced by just a visual change in a graph. So the sensation of anger compared to the sensation of care has very different effects on one of the immune markers, IgA, immunoglobulin A. After 5 minutes of care compared to 5 minutes of anger, both rose slightly, but then if you were angry, it dropped below baseline over 6 hours and took some time to get back up. So you're actually immunosuppressed after feeling angry for several hours afterwards. Whereas if you feel care, emotions of care and kindness, that has a tangible effect on your immune markers, which is so fascinating. Same with cortisol as well. We can see that cortisol and DHEA both improved favorably after performing some of these techniques. Generally, any kind of meditation technique will have similar effect, but if you want to make sure this is as reliable as possible, HeartMath is the one to do. Also, another study on heart rate variability, anger versus appreciation, and you can see a big difference in the coherence and the consistency of heart rate variability. We want heart rate variability to be high and consistent because that is the gap between your low and your high heart rates, depending on whether you're inspiring or expiring, breathing in or breathing out. And that's a marker of how well your parasympathetic nervous system is functioning. So that's it for stress. Next one is training. Are you on a new program? If so, it could be the culprit. Make sure that there's not a huge change in your volume load, and it's quite important to track this. I use an app called Heavy Set, which is absolutely fantastic. It just tracks your reps and reps times weight times reps times sets, which is your total volume load. And you can then see week to week what's happening with that, whether you're generally getting stronger or weaker, and whether you're putting yourself through more total volume stress than you can recover from. Is there a big change in your frequency? Have you gone from training 3 times a week to 4 times a week? Has there been a change in your schedule? Are you feeling more sore than usual? This is the thing to read then, if that's the case. So I'll post the link in the description for how to reduce DOMS. If that's the case, then it's important to get on top of that. It's a very accurate marker for how well recovered you are as well, if you're constantly feeling sore, or if you're feeling sore for longer than you normally would. Active recovery, so this is what you can practically do. If you've got sore legs, for example, you've been sore from doing squats, pick the same movement, load up 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max, and do 50 mid-range partial reps with that load. So if it's squats, just pick the mid-range, don't lock out all the way to the top and don't go all the way to the bottom, just stay in the mid-zone, 50 reps. Do that for a couple of sets, move on to the next exercise. Just easy session, don't get yourself towards failure. It's just about pumping the blood into those muscles and making sure you're flushing out some of those inflammatory markers. Limbering as well. So limbering is basically stretching but not pushing to your limit, just going within your limits, within your kind of range, and just playing around in that movement. Again, flushing the blood into the muscle and not worrying too much about trying to get more flexible. It's just about getting things moving, stopping things from stiffening up so that you can perfuse the muscles better and recover. 40-minute walk as well, very helpful, low intensity, don't push it, just 40-minute walk outside. There's also many innumerable benefits to just being outdoors as well. So those 3 things with your training will certainly help speed up recovery. You can also do a sauna and contrast shower. So sit in the sauna for 15 minutes, followed by cold shower. There we are. So repeat for a few cycles. Again, don't do it immediately after training, do it a few hours after so that you can allow the natural inflammatory cycle to take its course, which is involved with muscle regrowth. Try to avoid anti-inflammatories as well, unless they're sort of medically indicated or your doctor's made you take them. Sleep. Again, we've covered this at length before, but generally 7.5 hours per night, consistent wake-up time, and a bedtime routine. Full bedtime routine video included here. I'll put that in the comments because it's quite a long video, but very important to get that under wraps, and then you will basically have a consistent, steady schedule for getting to sleep. No more problems with getting to sleep. You'll sleep better, no more waking up during the night, and it'll have its effect on your recovery as well. Injury, almost the final thing. So again, I've covered this in another video called Is Rest Always the Right Answer When Injured? So check that out. But these are the key points. Identify if there is an injury. Do you have pain when lifting? Do you have a constant niggle? If so, recover. Stop picking the scab. This is one of the most common things, most common problems that we all do. I am fully guilty of this, where if I have some kind of niggly injury, I will keep trying to train on top of it and just make things worse. You need to allow yourself to enter step 3, rehabilitate. So pick movements that will allow you to still train but not aggravate the injury, all covered in that video, and find success in the movement. Use it as a chance, if you've got a shoulder injury, use it as a chance to specialize on legs for a while. Do some rehab stuff for your shoulders, all covered there. Then finally, once you're feeling pain-free, return to training and step things back up progressively. That is key, so that the injury doesn't rear its head again. If you start to get pain, return back to step 2 and 3 before you try and continue. So I'll include that video in the comments. Final thing is supplements. I'm always loath to recommend recovery supplements because they're very much like a bandage on top. But if you've made sure that everything else in your checklist is absolutely ticked off, these things can help as well. So based on the evidence, these are particularly kind of recovery-oriented supplements. So ZMA is zinc and magnesium. Spelled that wrong. There we go. So ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea, morello cherry, vitamin D, inositol, ZMA, phosphatidylserine, and probiotics, all of which are shown to either improve cortisol or to improve recovery in certain situations when you are under-recovered. The only essential one, I would say, is vitamin D, so that goes at the top. The rest of them are really kind of optional. Second to that, probiotics, because you can get them from food. You generally will have to eat food anyway, so adding in some more yogurt and kefir, sauerkraut, that kind of thing will certainly be helpful. Following that, phosphatidylserine, probably one of the safer ones and has quite a replicable long-term track record. And then if you're really struggling, you can add in the remainder as well. But that is it for Recovery 101, or Active Recovery 101 rather. So key points are to run through this checklist and make sure that all of that is under control. And if you need to, add a active recovery training session in place of one of your normal training sessions if you're really struggling. Make sure that you've got stress under control. Try some of the heart math or meditation exercises, lying relaxation. Make sure that your calories are on point, that you are hitting your targets. Don't be naughty, don't undereat to your targets. And that is it for today. All right, guys, speak to you next week.